It might not be the concept that makes a lot of sense to people who live the way I lived most of my life, in a lot of bad debt. I made it to 40 without ever having $1,000 in the bank, but thought I had debt under control. Went through a divorce and found out about $89,000 in bad debt in my name that I didn't know existed until the divorce. And I live in a community property state. So our debt is my debt. And then when she filed bankruptcy, our debt really just became my debt. So you would think that the worst thing to have when you have debt would be more debt. And I'm going to walk you through a quick timeline on how debt set me free and how I wish I had more. I'm going to tell you how much debt I have, how much it took to get where I am today, why I was able to make work optional, get rid of all of the bad debt, explain the difference between good debt and bad debt, and knowing that if I didn't have debt, if I didn't have the debt that I do, I'd still be working. I don't know if I'd have time or energy to do this live stream if I had to have that job. So thanks to debt, I have time freedom to share my time with you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. I hope I can get each one of you to the point where the average individual can make work completely optional in 10 years or less, even if you're not starting from the best position. That's the whole point of what I'm trying to share with you. So $89,000 in bad debt. I was a single parent with 3 kids, had been laid off from a police department after the 2008 recession and housing crash, because we all know when there's a housing crash and there's a recession, there's no more crime, so we don't need police anymore, so I got laid off. I was only making about $17 an hour when I decided to take control of my finances. I had started teaching truck driving at a commercial driver school here in Washington State, making $17 an hour as an entry-level part-time instructor. So how would debt help me? I was always able to keep my house and my kids through divorces, pluralize that, but I was never good at keeping the girl, so no more girls. Plenty of houses, had 3 kids though. I owned my house. Well, the bank did, and I owed the bank more than it was worth. It was worth around $100,000 or $90,000 after the housing crash, and I owed $138,000 underwater on the house. So that debt, not so great. And that debt's not included in the $89,000 in bad debt that was in my name that I didn't even know about. It's not depressing, and I'm not bitter. And I will definitely get to the super chats before I get to any of the questions today. I appreciate each one, which is letting YouTube know more people might want to see this content. So I had a lot of debt and low income. And how do you get out of that hole? I mean, one, you learn how to save, which means increase your income, reduce your expenses, save the difference. Saving doesn't make you wealthy, but it can help get rid of some of the bad debt. What I did to get around a bad debt to income ratio is I moved from my house into an apartment, and I rented out the house. My goal was to get rental income on my tax returns so that I could buy a place, and the lenders might consider rents, 75% of rents, in my debt to income ratio, making it look like I had a better income and would be a safer person to lend money to. So at the 2-year mark, I had finally saved up a little bit over $20,000. So I still had a lot of debt. I was just paying kind of the minimums. I was in focused saving mode to get the down payment for a house hack. At the time I was going to buy single family and rinse and repeat that every year. And in my area, single families don't cash flow. So I went for a duplex, and I purchased a duplex, putting myself in $285,000 of more debt. It's down to 277 after doing some time owning that property, but $277,000 is basically the debt that I owned. It was 285, it's 277 now. So $277,000 in debt in my name that I still owe. That doesn't sound like I'm working towards being financially free or able to make work optional. I'm in more debt. I owed on the single family house. I was paying for an apartment, which I then moved into the duplex. And here's what the debt did to my income. I was paying $1,500 a month for an apartment. You have to live somewhere. The house in the first year didn't really cash flow because I made all the new rookie mistakes that I talk about in most of my videos. But by that second year, when I was saving for the duplex, it was cash flowing. So I had cash flow from the house. Moving from the apartment into the duplex, I reduced my housing expense from $1,500 a month to $300 a month. Going at the time, $285,000 into debt, reduced my monthly expense by $1,200, allowing me to add $1,200 a month towards savings, to reducing my expenses. It took another 2 years to save the down payment for the next duplex. The first one was a 5% down conventional owner-occupied loan with the best interest rate because I was living there. The next one I did as a investment purchase. It was a higher down payment, but I had 2 more years of increased income, side hustles, and more money from work, cash flow from the single family house, reduced expenses with the duplex. So in a little over 2 years, I saved up a down payment for an actual investment purchase of a duplex, which put me another $217,000 after the down payment and closing costs and all expenses in debt. So now, if we add up the 277 that I owe on the first one, 217,000 on the second one, I'm $494,000 in debt, not counting the $89,000 in bad debt that was in my name, just the debt on the properties. Basically $500,000. I owe $500,000 to somebody else trying to become financially free. This seems counterintuitive. This seems like I'm going backwards. Like I owe all this money, but the house is cash flowing. I've reduced living expenses. And the second duplex it was just under $1,000 a month, right at the beginning, first year purchasing. Meaning I can save more every month. I'm still spending less because of the house hack. And the next duplex took less than 2 years because of the speed of the income coming in from side hustle, increasing work at work, increasing income at work. I was working my way up the corporate ladder, being stuck in the rat race. Eventually, I got demoted all the way down to president of the company. So increased income, kept living expenses the same. The first 6 years, I didn't take vacations. I took the kids to lakes and to, those kind of trips. We didn't do Disneyland, Disney World, or Hawaii or anything, but we just did normal, I want to say frugal, more hands-on type local entertainment. Then the big expenses still drove old cars. Most were 15 to 20 years old, had to have 3. So one of them ran well enough to get me to work. But now I'm $500,000 in debt. I buy the next duplex and it puts another $214,000 on my debt. The debt is racking up. This put me to $708,000 that I owed to somebody. I went into panic mode when I found out about the $89,000. It was actually way more than that, but I negotiated down to $89,000 with the lenders, the creditors that I didn't know existed. And that was depressing. I worked in law enforcement. I wasn't sure I was going to go back into being a police officer or not. And a bankruptcy is a career killer in law enforcement. So I never even considered that. But now I owe $708,000 to other people when $89,000 freaked me out. And at this point, I caught the fever and cowbell wouldn't fix it. I needed more debt. More debt was going to make it to where I never had to work again. Quick timeline recap. At this point, in the 2014 to 2016 era, you could have 4 mortgages in your name. So I reached the debt of 4 mortgages. I had the single family house and 3 duplexes. My plan at the time was to pay off. I used the debt income, the debt snowball, and the debt avalanche method. I picked my highest interest rate loan that had the lowest value, which was the single family house. By that time, it had been paid down to $121,000 that I owed, and I paid that all the way off. Then they changed, 2 things changed. One, you can have up to 10 mortgages in your name, and interest rates started going down. In 2018, I added another duplex. 2020, I refinanced some of them to better rates. But my next purchase was a 4-plex. So single family, duplex, duplex. Now 4-plex, much larger, much more expensive, twice the price of what I was paying on the duplexes, which makes sense because there's 2 units versus 4. But this added another loan of $457,000 in debt on that property. Basically, one transaction added almost another $500,000 to my debt, bringing my debt to $1,165,000 that I owe somebody else. Terrifying. I wish I had more. And 2020 happened. We had the pandemic. We had the eviction moratorium. We had the what else was happening? Well, there was forbearance, which I never took advantage of. There was the CARES Act. Emptied out retirement accounts because I was impacted by COVID. Our company was shut down for like 6 weeks. Ended up purchasing another triplex at the end of 2020 when everybody was saying don't buy because the world is ending, which added another $385,000 after down payment and everything to my debt. I owed another $385,000. Wish I had more. That brought my debt up to $1,550,000 that I owed when $89,000 was panic mode. Then in 2021, I purchased a duplex. Again, when prices were going up and everybody said, don't buy, prices are expensive. There were actually 2 duplexes for sale. I didn't at the time have the resources to buy both. I suggested the other one, which was at the same price, to a friend, and he said he would never buy because prices are too high. That one's been one of my best returning assets. And it added another $300,000 to my debt, bringing my total current debt to $1,850,000. So I owe a little under $2 million. When I put this on social media, Julie piped back with she has $2.1 million in debt, and I instantly got debt envy. It's a thing. I wish I had more. Here's what that debt did for me. I owe so much money. I owe almost $2 million, right? Who can retire when they owe $2 million? The $89,000 in bad debt was, one, bad because I don't remember getting anything out of that, but consumer debt, credit cards, car loans, more house than you need, vacations, debt on something that you're not going to benefit from long-term, bad debt. 89,000, that's plenty to have panic mode. So if you have 5,000 in bad debt, I'd be in panic mode. If you have debt that's not making you more money than it costs and you don't have an asset paying for it, that would put me in panic mode. But this debt on properties, the reason I was able to quit a 6-figure job now, because remember I was demoted down to president of the company, was still able to walk away from a job that I loved because time freedom eventually won out, is the debt, the 1.8 million, 1.85 million kicks off cash flow. These are income producing assets. Every month after principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and setting aside $3,000 for repairs in the future, there is $14,000 left in profit. After all of the bills are paid, like all of the mortgages, all of the debt is handled by the assets. 14, it's closer to 15 now because of the binder strategy, getting tenants to ask me to raise the rent. I live on less than $5,000 a month. I'm still house hacking. I live in one of the units of the fourplex. I might move out, and then this place would rent out for about $2,000 a month. So I can pretty much live anywhere that costs me $2,000 a month or less and still technically be living for free since this unit would be paying for it. The reason I say I wish I had more debt is because each time I added a cash flowing asset with good debt, the amount of money that I have every month that doesn't come from me selling my life 1 hour at a time is amazing. And it's an simply reproduced system. All of my deals are from the MLS. All of my deals are traditional lending. Every single one's through a regular lender, large bank or Fairway Mortgage, or it's not seller financing. It's nothing's creative. I'm way too lazy for that. If I lost everything, the first thing I would do would figure out how to create more debt. I'd figure out how to make the right kind. And it would come from getting a job, working consistently to have income so that I can qualify for loans, to do a house hack, to buy another property, to rinse and repeat every couple of years till the income snowball kicked in, which for me was around year 5 or 6, right around the time I paid off the single family house. To me, since I've done it, lived through it, this seems kindergarten simple. If you're watching content like this, I understand the stress. You don't know, you don't have it unless you have and you're watching because you're learning other things. But if you haven't started the journey, you only have 1 or 2 rentals or no rentals yet, haven't even made offers yet, you don't have that confidence that comes from living through it. So I don't suggest being too risky, taking on too much debt. There is a balance to this. One of the reasons I put down 5% on my first duplex instead of using a VA loan is I wanted to keep my VA loan in my back pocket in case a perfect deal popped up one day when I don't have a down payment. So I still have that as an option. But I also like having equity in my deals, because when I first started getting a hold of my finances, remember, I owed $138,000 on a house that was worth less than $100,000. When I decided to start paying it off, it was worth $121,000. I am amazed with my memory that I can keep any of this data in my head and accurate. Some of it, like the debt stuff, is written down, but the single family house wasn't. To me, when I was growing my portfolio aggressively, trying to reach financial freedom and make work optional, I tried to stay at 70% loan to value or less. So yes, the first duplex, when I purchased it with a 5%, it was 95% leveraged. That was riskier than what I like. But the next one's done at 20 or 25% down each time, with appreciation and principal paydown happening every year. I maintained less than 70% leverage throughout growing my portfolio across the board. When I chose to retire, 2 things changed. First, I changed my goal for loan to value, and I put it at 50%. I'm around 40%. The all aggregate value of all of this, all 7 properties, is a little over 5 million. I owe 1.8 million. So I'm at like 40-ish% leverage. 40% leverage or so. I haven't done the exact math because I'm under where my limit would be. If I get close to my limit, then I'd start to really look closely. The idea being I can handle larger problems. Murphy's Law becomes the fourth corollary. When a series of events can go wrong, they will, and in the worst possible order. So I want to be prepared for that without having to go back to work. The second thing I changed is I increased my reserves. When I was growing my portfolio in the beginning, when I had 7 units or less, I kept about $10,000 set aside for emergencies. So a tenant not paying rent, water heater or roof or something like that. But as I got over 7 units, so I have 7 properties now, 16 units. That's why I talk about properties and units a little different. Over 7 units, I raised it to $30,000. That was my reserve. Anything above the $10,000 or then $30,000 should be going to work in the next deal to earn more money, creating more debt so I could be more free. And now that I've retired, I've increased it to $50,000. And mentally, in my savings account, there's $50,000 that I don't touch. Everything above that should be put to work for the next deal. So each month I'm saving somewhere between, depending on how crazy I get and go and spend and rent Sea-Doos and go all over the world with my brother or whatever, I'm going to save somewhere between $5,000 and $12,000 a month towards the next deal. Big swing, because I don't want to have to control my life with a budget. One of the things that house hacking does is help me do all of this without ever having a budget. Someday I might have a budget. That'll be depressing, but not today. So let me get to these super chats really quick. I hope that these 19 minutes, I kept it short, I think. And I told myself I was going to hit record so I can make this a separate video, and my memory kicked in, and so none of that was recorded. And you can't make shorter videos out of long ones without recording it. Lesson learned. So the first super chat that I saw here, I think I saw, was Tom. Appreciate that, Tom. $5. And what are you doing with your children in your investing career? Same question. Same for guest if they pop in. There might be a guest that pops in. I actually was thinking of inviting Beth to this too. But tomorrow, Beth Traverso, who's an amazing investor, has a great information to share, is coming over tomorrow because I talked her into going on the slides to make a video. It's difficult to talk to a camera. It's difficult to think 3 sentences ahead of the words that you're saying so that you can get the tone and inflection right. It's really hard to do that while you're going down a slide. What am I doing with my kids, Tom? First, I'm very sorry for your loss. I know what you're going through. I went through that a few years ago. And later in the video, if you would like to hear it, Tom, I have something personal I can share with you publicly like this, or I can send it in an email if you'd rather. But I love the basketball player, and if I cared about sports, I would remember who it was. I just know it was basketball. I'm surprised that I know that much. Who says, my family's not rich, I'm rich. So I am not a parent who forced I ran a martial arts studio, and not one of my kids ever studied martial arts. My son was in wrestling, my daughters were in gymnastics, so whatever they liked and whatever they would do, I would encourage and help go along with that. So I'm not trying to push finances. I am trying to kind of be a parent sometimes and talk about, car loans and college debt and whatever. The magic trick I pulled off with my son, at least not my daughters, is that, well, he'll take in short content, so I have no fear that he'll ever see this because my live streams are too long. But make a YouTube channel, and he'll come to me and talk about subjects that I've referenced in a video that I had to research, and he knows the content. So that was pretty good to get him to understand that. I have a will, and it's mildly sarcastic. It's that they each get a third of the portfolio, unless they spend a penny on their mothers. Then the other two get everything. I'm here willing to share what I've learned about finances, but I don't push it. Because just like an audience on YouTube, nobody can hear a word you're saying until they're ready. There is somebody who saw the thumbnail that saw the word debt and moved on. They were like, nope, that's one of them gurus selling one of them fake classes on how debt's going to help them. And Dave Ramsey's told me that all debt is bad. Well, if it wasn't for debt, I'd still be working. I mean, the thing I didn't say at the beginning of the video is if, let's just say I saved up cash for the last 10 years, it's possible that I might have been able to buy one duplex. So I would then be house hacking. The other side, I would still have a $300 a month payment on the duplex. No, there would be no mortgage. So I'd be making the profit after taxes and insurance of the other side. That would not bring me anywhere close to financial freedom without debt. So that's what I'm doing with my kids. If anybody has better suggestions, put it in the comments. To be here as a sounding board and to try to help. Phil, thank you for the chat. I appreciate it. Tips to stay motivated, saving for the next deal. For me, Phil, the thing that kept me going always was, and I try to use politically correct terms. We're trapped in a job. It's in a form of being indentured. Like you can't live without income. So we work. Every time we purchase the next deal, we can increase the income that we have without having to increase the work. That was powerful motivation. And for some of us, it might be that you don't want to have to work, so you can choose a job that you want to do because you love that job, not because it makes good money. For me, it was the lazy. I just don't want to have to work. I did work 4 years longer than I had to. I reached that financial independence around 2018, worked for the last 4 years, could have quit any time. It helped to work longer, the financial freedom now, instead of, having more than I need, I have more than I need, and I'm saving that, $5,000 to $12,000, not five to eight, it's probably be accurate, $1,000 a month for the next deal. I'm always excited. Every time you open your emails and you look at the next thing that was sent by your agent, this could be the lottery ticket that you buy that increases the next cash flow for you. Different asset classes. Like I said, I switched from single family to small multifamily. If you're looking for small multifamily, or have you expanded your area out? Maybe if you've only been going an hour from your house, maybe an hour and a half, what does it look like in that circle? Whole new market. That's still close enough to manage. What if it's houses with ADUs? What if it's so let's say you can't find a deal. You're in that situation where you're hunting and I need to get back to doing the work every day. Like Michael Zuber says, do the work and find the next deal, right? I've been kind of taking a pause and goofing off and enjoying life and doing this transition to retirement thing. Also, that dice is over there. I was going to do a book giveaway in this video, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The motivation for the next deal. and the squirrel kicked in, threw off the Emperor's Groove. I hate my memory. Have I ever told you about my memory? You should watch my very first live stream. It was why I don't do live streams. There's literally a post-it here that says, it's Tuesday, you're in a live stream. Looking for the motivation for the next deal can be changing the asset class. And like I said, going single family to small multifamily, houses with ADUs, expanding your search. As you're saving money, and my brain finally gets up to where I was. Nope, that would be too much of an overshare. So I'm saving every month for the next deal, right? But as that savings gets bigger, more and more options open. Eventually, because right now I wouldn't suggest doing a BRRRR strategy where you were using timed or hard money, where you have to pay off, you have to be able to refinance. But if you save money to a significant extent, and instead of finding the next deal that would be your normal purchase with traditional lending right off the MLS, like all of my deals have been so far, I have another search set up for possible BRRRRs. And it might be that you go far out to where you're like looking in Gary, Indiana, where you can buy a property for $30,000 and put $30,000 into it, and now it's worth $100,000, and you can refinance out all your money. If you've saved up to $30,000, it's all your money in there. And if you can't refinance, you just leave the money in there and you just have the cash flow. So that's not the terrible situation. It's not the BRRRR where you borrow the money from someone else that's not yours and you buy it and you have to refinance. And then if rates go up so much and property values don't, and you can't refinance, where your situation at work changes and you can't refinance, now you lose it, everything. And like Cody Davis said, losing all of your money is no fun. What other strategies can you look into as you save every month? Because it's not always about the next deal. It's about how do you increase your income? How do you reduce your expenses? How do you save and invest the difference? And that saving and investing the difference, as that difference grows, can be different strategies. That's what keeps me motivated. And then Dividend Dave, who I'm hoping to see tomorrow at the Tacoma FI meetup. If anybody is in around Pierce County, let me know and I will tell you where it's at. There's a Facebook group, Tacoma FI. I think it's the last one you're coming to, Dave, before you move away. Can't make it. Please don't hate me forever. Too late. Suppose I should read before I talk. You can't make it tomorrow. Oh, it's okay. I'm sure you have my number. We'll communicate in the future. You'll have to keep me updated on how your house hack is going. That will be great. I will be doing, this is going to be weird. Don't go anywhere. I will be doing a giveaway tonight of Michael Zuber's book, 15 Conversations with Real Estate Millionaires, Audible version. If you have the book already and you win, you can choose another book. And I would hope it would be finance related. Doesn't have to be. And I will be doing it on the, depending on how many that come in, the 20-sided dice based on the order of the super chats that they came in. Let me go to the top here. And I see Michael Smith starts off the questions at the beginning. Can I win Zuber's Audible book? I asked first. That was very good because I think you reached out on my other video. I did a video today with Mark Matsky on how Matsky reached financial freedom, and I'm hoping to have him back because he invests in some asset classes that I don't. So I want to share his information. And the first person to do a super chat, because I didn't mention it, got a little version of that, and they've reached out with their email, so they'll be getting that as soon as this live stream is over. I'm not that good at multitasking, or I would do it now. So tonight it's going to be chosen through super chats. I have 20-sided dice, but I also have 30, 60, and 100-sided dice. So it depends on how many come in. Question: do you consult an attorney to help include clauses and is aware to protect you? So, Mike, I got my lease from the Washington State landlord-tenant resource page back when they used to have it on there. You can get leases from apartments.com, Zillow, BiggerPockets Pro members can get a lease for each state made by attorneys. The one thing that I did that helped me add a clause, and I got this information from my brother. This is something he did. So once in a while, he's super smart. is I went to the attorney that I've retained for evictions so that I don't have the stress of finding an attorney if I ever have to go through an eviction. That's already retained. But I asked her, I said, look, is there any verbiage that you would want on my lease that would make it easier for you to do your job if we ever have to do an eviction? Because the attorneys that work in your area know your local court system. They know what works, what gets thrown out. And so she gave me a paragraph to put in there that helped with her. So your local area might have attorneys that can help with that. And then I see Lauren. Why did I say Laurel? Do I know Laurel? No, I'm reading a book with a Laurel. It's actually a long name, Laurel on Thalassa. So Lauren, thank you for the super chat, and I hope you enjoy the audiobook. And like I said, if you already have it because you won it in the video earlier today, and you win again, then you can use the credit to choose something else because I will use the dice to determine it. And actually, since you won one today, if you win, so if Lauren wins, I'm going to roll again. So I'll give away 2. I always buy credits in groups of like 20 or 24 or something like that, 2 years at a time. So I have credits to give this away. I'm trying to help people reach financial freedom. Some people read through video. Some people learn through audio. Some people learn through audio, learn through video, learn through reading. You got to see the text document. I did a video the other day on actually why I did the audio version for 15 Conversations with Real Estate Millionaires. Make sure I'm not missing any here. Okay, cool. Nice emoji. I like that. Michael Smith, Tom, howdy. Question, if you have a rain runoff creek on your property or raccoons, bears, gators, do you need to include that in your lease as a warning if a tenant gets injured? That's an interesting question. I don't think I've been asked that one yet. I live in Washington where not everything is trying to kill you. We do have bear. I think there's an average of like 4 bear attack on the base here every year. I don't have anything on the leases for that. I think I would check locally. If you live in a place where, yeah, that's a good question. I would probably check with a local attorney to see what is included in leases for gators. I know we have to give warnings if your building is old enough to have lead paint and asbestos. So I'm thinking some kind of warning couldn't hurt, maybe. If you do short term, what I like is I recently stayed at Beth Traverso's cabin it's near Lake Cleone in a town near there. I don't remember the name of the town. I think it's where the state's on fire right now. So hopefully her cabin is okay. But there were, notes on this is how the game room works. This is how the hot tub works. This is how your checkout works or whatever. Maybe should be a sign at a rental if you're in an area that has dangerous animals, at least posted. I think warnings couldn't hurt. Tom, yields are slim to none these days or actually alligators? Big old mean nasty ones. Yeah, I'm finding deals that will cash flow. I think the goal for me is to know area average and then find the deal that beats that. And it's almost like we're having to adjust area average down. And the way the numbers have worked for me is about 80% of the deals. So out of 100 properties that I look at, 80 would lose money. 80 would be alligators. 20 would either break even or make some money. And out of those 20 is where I'm looking for the one that's worth making offers on. It is harder to find. So Tom, I would be watching days on market. Ignore the list price and make offers that make sense to you once the days on market total up to a number bigger than what it was normal. So if the national average was 17 days about a year ago and it ticked up to 21 days, now I think it's ticking up to 25 days on market is the average. So if your area with normal was 21 and you're like Zuber, he's not even looking at anything that's not on the market for at least 30 days. So whatever is more for you, look for those. And then Ryan would like to win the audio. I hope you do. Good luck, Ryan. Make sure I'm figuring out that not everybody puts a question in their super chat. So whenever I see a super chat, I'm going to look for a question in case it's around it, because I want to make sure I get to them. Pretty soon, I think live streams on Tuesdays are going to be limited to an hour and a half. And then after that, there will be a private live stream, either for course students or channel members. So I'm not sure which way that's going to go. Michael, is there a minimum cash flow amount you would take on the real estate investment, even if you get good ROI? $100 a month seems small. Yes, that's a great question. And technically the answer is yes. One of the reasons I'm able to use the 10% cash on cash or better return in my area when averages were 6 to 8. So if I'm finding averages now that are going lower, I might drop to an 8% and consider that a great deal. If the area average consistently has gone down, which I need to do the study, need to do the work to study that. So the flaw with the cash on cash return, which could be its own video, is if you use a VA loan and you put nothing down and you make $1 a year, that's an infinite return. That's not worth managing or taking the risk on a property. So there is a minimum because I'm doing, so I have a video on my channel called House Hack, how to run the numbers. So how to run the numbers on a house hack. The first thing I do is take out the house hack. I do it like I did at least 20% down. I do it as though I'm already moved out and all units are rented, so that I can compare apples to apples what properties look like compared to each other. Because with a really low down payment, it's very easy to show a high return. So the reason it works for me is I'm in an expensive area. I'm not in a really expensive area, Seattle, San Francisco, San Diego, one of the, the other 30 other property areas that are much more expensive than my area. But a duplex is $500,000 to $600,000 now. I'm not in Gary, Indiana, where you can buy a house for $100,000. So it's a fairly expensive market. So doing a 20 or 25% down, the cash flow per unit for me is over $800 a unit. So on some of my duplexes, I'm over $1,500 on just one property for the duplex. Yeah, so I have a minimum, but I haven't had to nail down what that minimum is because I'm not doing low down payments, right? When I did the first duplex, I probably purchased it without having any math involved whatsoever. I was like, if I move there, I'm saving $1,200 a month, so I moved in. But when I moved out that property, the year I moved out of it, it was making $800 a month. So that would have been 84,000. No, that was the next one. It was like 20. Yeah, so 20% down would have been 60, closing cost 72. Would have been like an 11 or 12% return based on it being the year after I moved out. If I did 20% down to run the math. Since I did 5% down, it would look like a great return, but don't run it that way because it's not, like I said, it's too easy to show a great return with a really small down payment. And then Miss Lauren, one, where can you find landlord agreements without lawyers and all that? Bought the one rental at a time book. I'm a beginner. That's a fair question. Thank you for the chat. You're in the running to get his new Audible book, which was not narrated by a robot. Where can you get leases? So apartments.com has leases. Zillow has leases. There might be some other platforms like Hemlane that would come with leases. So you don't need an attorney. I was invested. When did I saw the attorney like a year and a half ago. So I was 10 plus years into investing before I saw an attorney and retained one for evictions and got the clause to add to the leases. So that's not something that you need right away. BiggerPockets Pro members, which I don't know that an investor starting out needs that. I think that's more for agents and people who really need to network. But they have it if your membership is longer than 3 months, I think. Your state, depending on where you live, might have a landlord tenant resource page on your state's website, and they might have a version of a local lease, but you can always add clauses to it and take away things that don't apply to your specific situation. Each one of my leases for the property is almost unique because it kind of spells out the dimensions of the property, what responsibilities the tenant has. And you need to know some local laws, like how long can a lease be? Some states, You might do a 2-year lease. If you do a 2-year lease here in Washington State, where I'm at, you have to have the tenant signature notarized for any lease longer than 12 months. So you can talk to property managers in your local area to find out what some of those rules are too. I do recommend local REI meetups to find investors that are investing in your area. It might be virtual to start, but like the Tacoma FI, people going there tonight, we're all investing in the same state. So our leases can help each other. But if you're in another state and you ask me for my lease in Washington, it's not going to help you because the laws are very different and it might have different requirements for what works in your state. Yeah, that's what I would do there. Okay. Tom, got to figure out how to find some seller finance deals. Have you watched Christian and Cody's multifamily strategy? I'm not saying go for 6 or 10 or 30 unit stuff, but they focus a lot on seller financing and building the relationships with the property owners. Howdy. Moy says, on our way to 15,000. Thank you. My goal was to get at least 200 or 300 subscribers on this channel so that when I share, the whole point in the beginning was I was answering questions in BiggerPockets forums and Facebook groups like Real Estate Rookie and the official BiggerPockets group. But I wanted some videos because the same questions come up very often. Should I have an LLC? How do you calculate yield? How do you find tenants? How do you screen tenants? And I thought if I just make a few videos, I just send the videos to those people instead of typing out answers. And I thought, there's probably 200 or 300 people that would like that. So nailed it. Howdy, Brian. Phil, howdy. Rock and Roll USA. That would have been me on Paris Island, Greece this summer, but my 93-year father has me back in the US. That was me on an Alaska cruise about a month ago. Lauren, howdy, again from Tacoma. Hopefully we'll see you at the Harmon tomorrow. Michael, to Tom, no kids and family tend to be focused on their family, schools, kids, etc. But many times people need on-the-job training to believe success is possible. Therefore, build and they may come. True. Howdy, Levi. Do you know how Section 8 handles single-family house with ADU? Can you rent them out individually? Anything different about utilities when Section 8 is involved here? Thanks in advance. So contact your local housing authority, and most counties will have a housing authority. Some counties will have a nonprofit that runs your voucher system, so you have to know what's going on locally. As far as I know, the housing authorities I've ever heard of don't allow rent by the room. They might in some areas, maybe it's possible. Here in my state, I don't think they do. They rent by the unit. I have Section 8 that rents out duplexes, so it's one unit of a duplex. So a house with an ADU is separate. Just like a duplex, you should qualify with Section 8. I don't see a problem being there. So it'd be just like a unit, although I don't know they would do by the room. Howdy, Derek. My investment partner likes mobile homes because of cash flow, but I don't because they don't appreciate as much. Thoughts? I would have said exactly that 5 years ago. I would have said my brother invested in primarily, he's got 3 stick builts and the rest are mobile homes. I think that's the math. That's right. He's got 7 mobiles, 3 stick built, and he invests for cash flow. But mobile homes in my area are selling for $300,000. Like, houses are selling for more, but 5 and 10 years ago, those mobile homes were going for 60. Like, that's massive appreciation. And some of that depends on lenders. When you have a time frame when lenders are trying to lend money, they open up the floodgates when they say, we can lend on mobile homes. They might have a year requirement. They might have an inspection requirement. They might have a certain reserve amount that you have to keep, like whatever their local lenders, whatever your lenders requirements are, that can affect appreciation. I invested for cash flow. I've never tapped equity. I don't plan on doing home equity lines of credits. I don't plan on doing cash out refinances. I don't plan on selling a 1031ing. I mean, I might, but it's going to be a very small part of the portfolio where everything else can carry financial freedom so that I never have to work again. That was my goal. I do think recycling capital and doing, HELOCs and cash out refinances and selling and 1031ing will grow your portfolio a lot more than mine. My goal is not a big portfolio. I want the most amount of cash flow with the least amount of units. So I'm at 16. I might sell a couple and pay off debt. I'm not saying that's a good thing, and I'm not saying I'm going to do that. I'm just saying I want the cash flow. I don't care about the appreciation. This is my kids' things. And what did our kids ever do for us? If your goal is to be like Michael Zuber or Matt the Lumberjack Landlord and have as many units as possible, like grow your thing, yeah, mobile homes might not be the thing. They might not appreciate as much to give you equity to take out and put to work, to give you the ability to create debt on property, because that's what equity is. People, I myself call it equity because that's what the definition is. You have ownership in an asset. What is your amount of ownership in an asset? But when people take equity out, what you're doing is creating debt on an existing asset. So it's working great for my brother. And I guess it would depend on what your goals are. So hope that helps, Derek. Howdy, Dividend Dave. Sorry, I'm going to miss you tomorrow. Dawn and Bev Perkins. Thank you. Definitely using debt to get free. Yes. I read it correctly for the podcast in the future. Hello, Futureland. Congrats. Definitely using debt to get free there, to get there. Ronnie, howdy. About how much you were cash flowing when the income snowball kicked in. I really noticed the income snowball at about $2,700 a month in cash flow while house hacking. So no mortgage and $2,700 a month coming in that I didn't have to work for. That was when the income snowball seemed like money would build up faster than I could find a place to put it to work. Right around the 6 to 8 year mark, as I paid off the single family house, which I wouldn't do now. Looking back, I would have put the money to work in another asset and had better cash flow. But remember, I had you have to think of what you knew at the time. Like when a police officer does something on a crime scene, you have to think, what were they aware of at the time the decision was made, not looking back. You have to think, I had 4 mortgages. They limited you to 4 mortgages in your name. So part of the reason I paid one off was to work in the system and stay where I thought banks had their limits. Phil, what initially spurred you on to start investing in real estate? I had tried for 2 pensions. I joined the Marine Corps for several reasons. One, it was so much easier than the family business. My family, my 2 brothers and my dad all had their own residential tree services. I was the youngest brother, so I was the manual labor force. So I joined the Marines because that was easier. But if you do 20 years in the Marines, you get a pension, right? And now they have a soldier for life deal where you might even get it less than that. At the 6-year mark, career path changed because after Desert Storm, the Marine Corps downsized. So I thought, I'll get a CDL, and I never really landed a union job. So, I mean, when I did finally get working at Oak Harbor Freight Lines years later, they went on strike. So everything I was doing towards a pension, I got into law enforcement at the 8-year mark. The 2008 housing crash happened and the recession hit and I got laid off. So everything that I did to build a retirement in the traditional go to school, get good grades, get a job, climb the ladder, get a pension, kept getting taken away. And so I thought there has to be a way to create my own pension or to have income that can't be taken away due to things outside of my control. And that's what got me into real estate. And it didn't hurt to have the example of I have my brother who retired at 50 with 10 paid off rentals. I have another friend who has 30 rentals, who was a real estate agent for decades. So I kind of had their examples, but they invested in very different ways than me. So it took me a while to figure it out. That is what got me into it originally, Phil. Howdy, Tennessee. I'm glad you recorded Mike Zuber's new book. Thank you. I'm glad I did too. Michael, that was Shaquille O'Neal. My kids aren't rich. I am. Yeah. Thank you. I won't remember next week. My brain just doesn't keep up with the sports ball stuff. And although I did go to a baseball game recently, and our local Tacoma team was playing the Sacramento team, and I thought it was a little me and Zuber tete-a-tete there. Invest to wealth. Howdy. Sawadee Club. Kauto Club. Yeah. Kapkun Club. That's all. Howdy. Hey, for your first property, should I focus on getting an FHA loan or conventional? Worried about the rent requirement and PMI. Rent requirement. Worried about rent requirement. Okay. Sure about the rent requirement thing. So on your first property, there's a couple of things to consider. If you're buying single family house, single family with ADU, and in some cases, duplex, conventional is almost always the better way to go. It's easier to get a seller to accept it. It can be 3% down on house or house with ADU. It can be 5% down on a duplex. You have to lender shop. Some lenders want more than 5%, but not all. A lot of people think FHA because it has an F and an H in it. They think it means first time home buyer, and that's not what it means. It's Federal Housing Authority, and all it means is your credit sucks, your debt to income sucks, so here's a loan product. That's FHA. It's designed for somebody who's in a bad situation to help you get on the property ladder, because being on the property ladder is good for you. The conventional loan, PMI, if you put down less than 20%, will automatically go away when you hit 22% equity. They say automatically. I would still, like I did, check with your lender when you get there, and it should go away without having to refinance, without any necessity to go from, like Lumberjack Landlord talks about his 4-3-2-1 method. And that's because if you have an FHA loan and you want to refinance out of it and use another FHA loan, they want you to be moving towards a single family house or into a larger single family house. So to go from a house to a duplex, you have to, with an FHA loan, you have to justify it, to have a reason. It's closer to work, it's closer to daycare, it's a better school district. There's 3 bedrooms in the duplex and only 2 in the single family house. Whatever reason you can justify it, you have to find a lender who believes your story. Like, there's a lot of hoops to jump through there. Some lenders probably don't care. All lenders aren't made the same. Find the lenders where it doesn't matter. I preferred conventional. With the duplex, it was 5% down. Could have done 3.5% down with FHA, saved a little bit of money, but paid PMI until I refinanced, which I still haven't refinanced that conventional loan. It's still the same one. I haven't even touched that one for interest rate. It wasn't worth it. I refinanced almost everything else when 2021 rates went down really low. So if you go for a triplex or a fourplex, this is where sometimes FHA can outshine conventional because it's still 3.5%. Mortgage insurance still stays for the length of the loan until you refinance or pay off or sell the property. But at 3.5% down versus maybe 15 or 20 or 25, even owner occupied, that some lenders will want for a triplex or a fourplex, FHA might be better. So it takes a little bit of studying both. And there are several videos. I have a video, it's in my versus one of FHA versus conventional, and it talks about all the pros and cons, but I think I just listed out most of them. So it kind of depends on your situation. What are your goals? Are you going to be house hacking again and again? If you get an FHA, you're kind of locked into not using another FHA until you can refinance out of this one. There's also 203K loans, first-time buyers, where you get a loaned amount for the property purchase and an amount to fix it. Although there's some challenges that go along with that because you have to find a contractor who knows how the system works and will work with the 203K program. But I think you're doing the right thing. I've seen you on here before. You're educating yourself before you make that decision. Almost made it an hour before I had to thank the sponsor of the video. Which we all know is, of course, Alien Vodka. That doesn't actually sponsor the video. They just make it possible. And they make your eyes water. Alex, howdy. Hi, Dion. How do you choose between a couple? I'm sorry, squirrel kicked in. Okay. How do you choose between a couple different properties? Be it duplex, fourplex, is it strictly yield, or do you factor the neighborhood, etc.? So there is a lot to it. I wish I could say, nope, it's just done, right? No. Yield is where you start. And I don't differentiate a duplex to a fourplex on yield in the beginning. So like the first thing I'm looking at, single family, duplex, triplex, fourplex, whichever one has the best yield gets my attention. For my first 5 properties, it was really important to me that they were all more than 10 miles apart so that I would draw tenants from different sources. So if the best yield was right next to another one, it might have ticked down on the desirability list, but not been checked off completely. 2 of my properties are 7 miles apart. One was a good enough deal to pursue anyway. Which one's closest to the most economic drivers? Which one's not by a busy street? Which one has the best parking? Do they both have washer dryer hookups inside and garages for each unit? Are they side by side units? Like there's all this whole mental checklist of things that I go through. It's strictly yield. I do look at, I would prefer, in 2021, I wanted to buy a fourplex. In 2022, I would like to buy a fourplex. But in 2021, I found a duplex that had a good yield and I jumped on it. So I'm hunting for a fourplex, but if I find a single family or a duplex that has the right yield, I'm going to go for that too. But I still have my other criteria. I have certain things that I want for financial stability, not close to other properties, close to several economic drivers. Then I want the things that help limit tenant turnover. Side-by-side units for less noise complaints, washer dryer hookups in the unit, garage for each unit because more space equals more stuff, so less likely to move. Like I have there's a video on my channel called Buying a Rental, My Search Criteria. And that breaks down all of the reasons and things why I look for certain things when I buy a property. Because here's the thing that's really important to me. I had Mark Matsky on the video on the channel earlier. He invests in oil and stocks and dividends and real estate. And he's like very diversified. He's got, I think, 2 pensions. Like he's got all kinds of things. So like the stock market can crash and he's like, yeah, that sucks. But these 8 other things are doing great, right? I'm 100% real estate. I wouldn't own a stock if someone gave it to me. I'd sell it and buy real estate. But I diversified the locations. I diversified the tenant base, with some military, some working, some Section 8. So my stability comes from making sure I've checked off as many of these boxes as I can. And that doesn't mean it has to have all of them. It's as many of the boxes as I can. If I found a duplex that was an over and under, which is not one of my search criteria, I don't want those, right? But the yield was great. The location was great. It had everything else checked off. I'd probably pursue it. And then I see that Laura, thank you so much, Laura. I might reach out. I have questions about Panama. I might be taking a trip with a friend, and maybe you can help me with that. And I want to look in here and see if, there's your question. There we go. I'm enjoying the audiobook so much that I can't put it away. It is so motivational. Dion, thank you so much for taking the time to record it. Thank you so much, Laura. That was the reason why I wanted to record it. I liked Michael Zuber's first book. I've got it here. Well, the Audible was the robot voice. And I was thinking that this is 15 conversations that people might benefit from, but I don't know that I would sit through the robot voice on the larger book. And it didn't take much time. I tell everybody it took about 15 minutes, between naps, I just recorded the book. That's not how it went at all. Zoranthus, howdy. To Vatsal, they usually recommend FHA if you can get a fourplex to live in it, so you can get it for super cheap on the money down. Totally agree. Triplex or fourplex, the FHA sometimes outshines conventional. I did conventional, but it wasn't the first one. I wanted to do 20% down. It was way later. It was after the income snowball, and it was my first fourplex purchase. If I purchased a fourplex before the income snowball, I would have had to probably go FHA, because starting out investing, making $17 an hour with a bunch of bad debt and thinking, oh, someday I'm going to put $141,000 into a deal is beyond fiction to if you were talking to me 10 years ago. Now it's like, I don't know, I was saving that much at least that much every year. Now it's not about half that because I'm not working, but still easily $60,000+ a year going into account that I have to find a place to put to work. It's almost like owning a bunch of rentals would be good for you. Monica, howdy. I have 4 residential homes. Would you recommend to sell or get a HELOC to start buying multifamily? I don't get much cash flow from this properties, but I invested about 20 to 30% in each house. How are you, Monica, doing your rents? When you say you don't cash flow, so in my area, single family wouldn't cash flow. The only reason I say technically, because I know people like to call me out on stuff, I have 2 single family houses. One house is part of a triplex. It's a house and a duplex on one property. One of them is an ADU. One of them is not. I don't know which one's which. So I technically have 2, but my single family house, right now it would sell for $450 and rent for $2,200. It wouldn't cash flow. It might beat the mortgage, but your return would be nothing, and then you're not setting aside for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy. The only reason that cash flows is because I bought it in the dinosaur days, like 99. technically for $98,000, but I wrapped the closing costs with a first-time home buyer program at $102,000 wrapped into it. With an adjustable rate mortgage. I'm very sorry, I was the cause of the 2008 housing crash. So in my area right now, if I paid what they're selling for now, I wouldn't want to own single family houses. I don't know. Honestly, I really don't know enough about your situation to give solid advice. I would tell you what I would do. What would you net if you sold? Think 8% at least for agent fees and closing costs. And interesting sound. Thunder. Or the neighbors are angry at each other again. Take out the cost of selling and think 1031. Could you find deals that would get a cash flow if you switch to small multifamily? That's what Robert Kiyosaki and Brandon Turner talk about the stack. You get 3 green houses, 1 red hotel, 3 green. I might mess up. It's been forever since I played Monopoly. Maybe, but I would. So before I would ever do a home equity line of credit, cash out refinance, or sell to 1031, the first question before all of that, can you find a deal that's going to cash flow, that's going to justify the cost of selling? Could you handle paying the taxes if your 1031 doesn't go through on the timeline that it's required? I had the choice to buy single family over the last 12 years, but went small multifamily every single time. Only on the one single family from before, but it's area specific. There are people who, like Millennial Mike, who are buying single family in other states where it makes sense. He house hacks a small multifamily in Seattle or around the area of Seattle, but he's investing out of state, buying single family that cash flow. If you're not cash flowing, I would look at your equity position and think of your cash on equity return. What are you going to get if you do move that money? I still love your emoji, Lauren, from your super chat. Thank you. Surf Marco. Howdy. 75 people watching and only 30 likes. That's because I don't have the hack program to get likes going better. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Batsal to Zaranthus. What about the rent requirement and PMI needed? With all that, cash flow goes negative. On a fourplex, it would be really hard to have cash flow negative, even with PMI. Like I moved into my fourplex and it was making $1,700 a month in profit before I rented out the room in my unit. But remember, it could be negative while you live there. When we run the numbers on a house hack, run it as though it's the year after you've moved out and all the units are rented. So if your unit was rented in a fourplex, would it then cash flow? Sebastian, hola, howdy. And howdy, Laura. So Vatsal, thanks, Dion. I know you have only been in this situation once. I have 2 realtors that have put me on the same MLS query for properties. How do I handle? So I've only had that situation once, and I told them it literally comes down to whose email came in first. So who sent you the search first? And be transparent. Like literally show a screenshot of, hey, thanks for sending this. I really appreciate working with you. You know my deal. I work with several agents. And that's how I handled the one time it happened to me. I let them know. The other guy missed it by like an hour and a half. I said, like, I've got an offer in from the first time already. But now when I'm watching days on market, it would still come down to who sent you the deal first. That's how I would handle that. Again, outsider information, don't know your relationships with either agent, don't know if one of them is your aunt and might make Thanksgiving suck, but that is how I would handle it. I'm very transparent though when I start dealing with an agent. It's kind of like when you meet somebody, you set the expectations. It's not like you know them for a while and then you set expectations. I tell all of the agents, look, here's my auto searches. I have several agents with auto searches set up. Whoever sends me the deal I want to pursue first is the one I'm going to work with. I hope that helps. And then where was I? Julie, howdy. You are the person who gave me debt envy today. Appreciate it. I need to sell my home to buy my next property, a home and rental property, but my home isn't selling. Any ideas? So here's not a good situation to be in. We had prices going up for over the last year, like extremely fast appreciation across the board because we had record low interest rates. Interest rates are a lagging indicator. When you hear about places that are closing now, they've probably been under contract 40, 50 days, depending on whatever delays they had. So they're working on interest rates from 2 or 3 months ago, maybe, possibly up to 2 months ago, right? So interest rates have gone up. Lenders did compress there for a while. Demand is going away. Are you getting offers that are just too low? Or are you getting offers that match the price you want, but they're asking for concessions? Because smarter buyers right now are saying, look, I'll offer your price, but you're going to buy down my points. You're going to pay closing costs. You're going to do these repairs. I guess I'd have to find out what you think is stopping your deal. Is it price? Is it were you tracking the trajectory of prices over the last few months and you thought this is the point where I'm going to sell? When those are what we are calling wish list price, you would sell at that amount. It would make sense to sell and buy rental properties. But the interest rates and demand have shifted. And right now selling, and it's funny, buying a rental property, I really don't rely on the agent. Like, I feel like I have to tell my agent, look, I know what you think, I know what you want to do, but no, do exactly what I'm saying. I want you to say, I want you to structure your sentence this way, and you're my agent, you're going to do that, or I'm going to work with somebody else, right? So I'm the one buying the properties. You date your agents, you marry the properties. When you go to sell a property, I think the agent that you get is everything. Their network, their skills. Since I haven't sold a property, I am not the person to recommend how to find a selling agent. But you're kind of local to us here. Maybe reach out to Tish Titano. She's in our Facebook groups. She might be the agent, or she might know who to connect you with to help you sell. That would be how I handle that. Selling agent is way more important to me than buying agent because I'm the one that negotiates on purchases. All I expect from my agent is speed, respond to my questions and stuff and my offers fast, and follow directions. And I lost my chat. Okay, Sebastian. I'm currently renting. Do I buy a home or an investment property next? Hopefully you're old enough to be a Friends fan. Put your hands together. Buy a house with an ADU. If you just have to live in a house that's not touching something else, turn it into an investment now. Buy a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex, live in one unit and rent out the others. And a lot of people say, I can't do this because I have a family. Well, I had young kids. How many millions of families live in apartments? Or I can't do it because whatever that reason is that you're thinking I can't house hack is the reason you should. If you just absolutely can't house hack for whatever reason, and you just have to not live next to tenants, share a wall with the garage of their garage on tenants. I mean, it's not like you're even going to use the same driveway, but just can't do that. I would recommend buying the rental property first because it's what actually got me on the property ladder. Remember, I owned a house, moved into an apartment and rented out the house. You're living in an apartment. So you're doing what I would do. If you buy a rental, the sooner you can buy a rental and get rental income on your tax returns, your debt to income ratio for investors in real estate matters for 2 years. After 2 years of investing in real estate, it becomes almost absolutely irrelevant. After 2 years of having rental income on your tax returns, I've had agents, lenders, brokers tell me this exact sentence from several different ones. You can borrow any amount you want, as long as you can save the down payment, because they're factoring in 75% of rents. One or two of the lenders also had the caveat that they wanted at least 50% of your rentals had to have 3 months or more remaining on their leases. So it was the majority of your leases have to have more than 3 months. So month to month doesn't really help. Short term doesn't really help because it was inconsistent in their eyes. That might have shifted now. But they wanted longer leases and 2 years on your tax returns. The sooner you get rental income on your tax returns, the sooner you make debt to income irrelevant. But if you can house hack, it's the reason, it is the main reason why I was able to retire. Tom, Dion, how does the bank look at the currently rented properties when you want to purchase? Is it only after 2 years rental income they do this? For the most part, yes. Sometimes when you're buying a small multifamily, some lenders will look at it in the beginning, but remember, it's only 75% of rental income in your debt to income ratio. Most lenders want the 2 years of rental income. Ironic, that was basically what I was just talking about. Ceranthus to Vatsal, hey, I don't know how they do it, but that's what they recommend. Aldair, howdy. Oh, I says, to Sir Marco, I forgot to thumbs up. Thanks. I also have memory issues. Nice. The thing that gets me with the thumbs up button, especially on the live streams, is if you're on a mobile device, you have to close down the chat to hit the thing to open up the chat. That's why it's like it would be really cool if in the live chat there was still a thumbs up button there somewhere. And again, thank you, Ryan. Want to win the audiobook? Good luck. I hope you do. All there. Second Dion Talk in a row. We'll be a regular here. Awesome. I hope the information helps. My goal is literally to help, and this is, you'll hear this in most of my videos, is to help the average individual realize that you can reach financial freedom in 10 years or less and make work completely optional, even if you're not starting from the best position. And there's a very selfish reason. Here's the follow-up that I don't put in very many videos. I think I've said this once or twice before, but I told you about my memory issues, right? I was in a crappy position, a lot of debt, low income, single parent, like you just pile on things. The only thing I was missing, I think, was a health concern. I think it's just been super lucky that way, right? And I reached financial freedom. I used to tell my friends and family, I'm the guy that's going to work until he dies. And then, I mean, I didn't retire at 30 because I didn't start investing until 40, but at 52, I retired at 52. I get to do whatever I want for the rest of my life, never have to work again. Imagine how that feels. Not just retiring early, but going from a crappy situation to never have to work again, can do pretty much anything I want. My kids will inherit millions instead of inherit a problem when I'm older and can't take care of myself. But I can only do it once. Like that emotional roller coaster of going through that ride, I can only do it once. And I'm not going to give everything away to start over so I can experience it again. Like, I'm not stupid. I might talk and theorize and game theory how this is how I would do it, but I'm not going to do it. But every time somebody like Dividend Dave reaches out and goes, hey, I just got my duplex. It's in like those states over there. I'm going to move over there and house hack. And he closed on it. I get to sit back and go, that's that part of the journey. And I get to watch the next thing and the next thing and then watch him reach financial freedom. So each person watching that I help reach financial freedom, I'm doing it because I want to experience those emotions. And for me, that feels very selfish. Sebastian, would you buy an investment property in Gary, Indiana? No. And I don't want to say that Millennial Mike and Matsky are doing it wrong. They're doing it in a way that works for them. Here's some really simple math and why I'm hoping that Millennial Mike does another house hack here in Seattle. Around Seattle, not in Seattle. He's not stupid either. So around Seattle, he does another house hack. Each one of my properties is getting better than $800 a month per unit cash flow. That wasn't a goal. That's just a fact. Like, I wasn't shooting for cash flow per unit. I had a minimum based on the question earlier. I wouldn't want a really small cash flow because it doesn't justify the risk and time and it takes to manage a property in a tenant. I was looking for a yield, but that yield was 10% like year one, where most of my properties made $500 or $600, $400 to $600 per unit. 3 years later, most of them are over $800 a unit. So at year 6, I had $2,700 a month in cash flow. Pure cash flow after principal, interest, taxes, insurance, setting aside for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy, $2,700 a month came in that I didn't have to sell my life 1 hour at a time for. When I was a police officer, my take-home pay was $1,300 every 2 weeks, $2,600 a month. So I was making $100 a month more in 6 years with 4 properties. Investing in Gary, Indiana, Millennial Mike has said he makes about $250 a month per property. 10 properties to get to the same cash flow as 4 properties. Yes, the Dave Ramsey debt snowball works because you take your smallest amount and pay it, and you get the dopamine hit of taking care of it and you seeing a debt disappear. So he gets to close on more deals. And it takes less money, so the barrier to entry is less. But instead of saving up 30 or 40, buying a property and then investing 20 or 30 to fix it, so he's 50 or 60,000 in, I saved a little bit longer and took 70 or 80 to buy a duplex here in an expensive cost of living area, but the cash flow was higher and it took less properties. So I'm not an out-of-state investor for that reason. If I lived in an area or an entire state, like California is like Seattle to me, like the rules and regulations and rent control, and then it might make sense to invest in another state. Sure. My situation though, I'm investing where I self-manage and the cash flow per unit is significantly more. I have less units with more cash flow, which was my goal. I think Millennial Mike's goal is more units like Lumberjack Landlord and Michael Zuber's strategy. So neither one is right, neither one is wrong, neither one is better or worse than the other. Your goals, your abilities, your timeline, like all of those things that are unique to you will tell you whether you should invest at a distance or local, high cost of living area. And a lot of people think, I live in an area that's too expensive. I can't invest here. I've got to invest somewhere else. Well, if you live in an area that's expensive, house hacking is more important. If you can move to Gary, Indiana, and you can house hack and you could buy a house for $50,000, you're saving $500 a month mortgage payment, $300 a month mortgage payment, $700, whatever. If you can house hack here in Tacoma, I was saving $1,200 a month just on the first house hack. I'm being paid $2,500 a month to live in the fourplex that I'm in now. So that doesn't suck. Then Tom points out that there are better rates for owner-occupied loans. That's another reason why house hacking, if you can put your hands together and buy that instead of house or investment property, you get the better rate if you can house hack it. And then that rate is fixed for 30 years, even though you only have to live there for 1. Afro-capitalist, howdy. Hey, do you cap your future expenses or do you keep saving the percentage? If you cap your future expenses funds, will the increase that is not going to future expenses count towards cash on cash metrics? So I'm gonna have to think about that second part of your question, but the first part is yes, I do cap it. So earlier I talked about when I had 7 units, I had a reserve emergency fund of $10,000. I figured that can handle the roof for a couple of months with no payment from 7 units or less. When I got more than 7, all the way up to 16 units where I'm at now, while I was working, I kept $30,000 in that account. Now that I'm not working, there's $50,000 in that account. So when I buy the property, I run the numbers as though I was forever going to have to set aside 15%, 10 for repairs and maintenance, 5 for vacancy, so that the property could stand on its own, right? It doesn't have to rely on cash flow from my other units to justify purchasing it. When that 10,000 is full, or the 30,000 is full, or now the 50,000 is full because I'm not working now, so I've raised that up for a bigger cushion of safety. The money above that goes to the investing fund. It doesn't go to the lifestyle fund. I don't take bigger vacations, buy the new car, whatever. It doesn't increase my living expenses. It increases the investing expenses. So right now, and I'm very transparent with numbers, don't sue me, bro. There's about 14,000 a month, a little more than that now coming in. That's after principal, interest, taxes, insurance. I set aside $3,000 a month for repairs and maintenance, and then the rest is mortgage, right? So the rent comes in, mortgage is paid, $3,000 is set aside for repairs and maintenance, $14,000 is mine. And I end up saving like somewhere between $5,000 and $12,000 of that, depending on the month and how goofy I want to get. But that $3,000 that would be set aside for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy, I'd have to do the math on exactly what it is just going towards my next investment. If the 50,000 ever drops down because I, do water heaters, a foundation, a roof, whatever expenses for the rentals, have a tenant turnover and then do a rehab that takes a whole bunch of money, whatever it is, then the 3,000 goes back into the 50 until it hits the cap, then it goes into the investment. I would never want the money that's needed to be set aside for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy coming to me to have to live, because then when that reserve dips down, I would have to lower my lifestyle to refill the reserves. That's not good. So as long as it's not impacting the money you're using to live, so while you're working, it should just be going to investing. Once you're financially free and you quit the W-2, if you do, you might not, you might work because you have a job you like. That money still doesn't go to your lifestyle. It goes to the investing fund. That was a good question. And what was the other one? So the end of your question, your funds will be increased. Right? If you cap your future expense funds, will the increase that is not going to future expenses count toward cash on cash metrics? No. So there were a couple of times where I heard Matt the Lumberjack landlord say that he will get a return and he doesn't need to set aside. But his portfolio is so big, he knows the numbers. He's got it down like that don't compare year 10 to year 1. I don't put it towards cash on cash metric because I want the property to stand on its own, to where it generates the money that it would take to run that property if I had no other income. Tom, Dion, since you owe make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay. Since you owe so much, as you think one of those debt consolidation programs could possibly increase cash flow? So no, because I have low interest rate fixed debt. If I did a portfolio loan and got lower interest, I suppose it could increase cash flow because it would recast the 30 or 40 years of whatever the new debt was. Haven't considered doing that. I refinanced some mortgages in 2020 to a lower interest rate, which did reset the 30 years, but that increased cash flow. I didn't do them together. I kept them separately because if you do a consolidation loan, there's a few more steps to jump through if you want to sell one of those properties. I like to have options. And so, whenever we're talking about this, I will slip sometimes. I try to never say never. I never say always. Try not to use those. Here's the statement. And tell me if you can remember the movie this is from. The less a man makes declarative statements, the less apt you are to look foolish in retrospect. I'll hint to the Tarantino movie. Surf Marco. Well, he says, me too, which is why I commented. Nice. Derek, howdy. My favorite BP podcast. You were Marine Corps and law enforcement also. Just reached financial freedom thanks to all you do. Thank you. That is awesome. Congratulations. Simplify. And then Miss Lauren's super chat, where you can find landlord agreements. We went through that. Tom, my stress is trying to get my second deal with these crazy prices and rates. I know Michael and Matt are set and seem easy peasy. I don't know if it's easy peasy, but for us starters, it's scary. So I did one deal last year. I haven't done a deal this year yet, but I have been dealing with retiring and dealing with some of that kind of stuff. And I don't think it's easy peasy to find the next deal. I think it does take discipline to do the work. You find it, you might, like I said, have to expand your circle out a little bit or look at different asset classes. Look for the deals people are missing, like in any time, you look for a high square footage property that's only 2 bedrooms and you think there might be a third one in there. Are you looking for houses with ADUs? And if you are, how are you? And how are you looking for your properties, Tom? You've watched a lot. You've probably heard me say this. One real estate agent isn't going to find you all of the deals on the MLS. They're just not. I have at least three working with auto searches. And there came up earlier, I've only had this situation once where they send me the same deal within 24 hours of each other. Searching is nuanced. So do you have multiple agents searching? Do you have different search strategies? Do you have a search strategy set up for a BRRRR? Do you have, or if you can do it, if you do have it for single family, small multifamily, for a house hack, for an investment property? What areas are you searching in? Information on Redfin and Zillow is dated. I've seen my small multifamily deals pop up on those like months after I closed. So let me put a chat in here really quick. So when I get to that comment, and in the first few years, it feels like it goes forever. It was 2 years to my first deal saving, and then 2 years to my second deal saving and buying. Year and a half to the third deal. Then, it just gets faster and faster later. Jay, cheers. Do they make alien bourbon? I've only seen the alien vodka. I mean, water. This is just water. Strong water. Michael Smith. Howdy. Thumbs up. Thank you. Appreciate that. And then Derek with his super chat about your investments with mobile homes. Lauren, I can't make it tomorrow. Unable to switch shifts. No worries. Sent your email. Hopefully next time I will be there. Cool. We meet once a month. Hopefully we can start doing it on Wednesdays. For the last year or so, we've been meeting every Tuesday. A lot of local investors will meet up. Different strategies. There are people there who invest in crypto. There are people there who invest in short-term rentals. There were some people at the last one who are building on the other side of the state. So there's a lot of information exchanges happening there. And I got your email, Lauren. You won the Audible book earlier today. So as soon as this live chat's over, I'll be sending that to you. And Lauren, if you have Michael Zuber's book already, let me know in an email and let me know the different book that you would like, and I'll get you that one too. And I also made the caveat at the beginning when I'm going to roll the dice. If Lauren wins today in this video, since you already won one this today, you're going to win one, and then I'm going to roll again, and somebody else will win. Ethan, howdy. Can you explain if you ran into debt to income issues when applying for your second, third, or fourth house hacks? How did you get around them? So hopefully you were here a few minutes ago, Ethan, when I was talking about debt to income ratio. So this will be the Cliff Notes version. Debt to income ratio matters for 2 years. It's a little bit of a struggle to get multiple properties in those first 2 years because you're too much of a risk for lenders. They don't know that if you know how to find a lease, screen a tenant, repair things, file everything correctly, like all of the things that you have to figure out, right? So lenders think you're a bigger risk in those first 2 years. Once you have rental income on your tax returns after 2 years, debt to income doesn't mean anything. Lenders have actually told me the sentence, and more than one. You can borrow, you can do any amount you want to borrow as long as you can save the down payment, because they look at 75% of your rental income in your debt to income ratio. And if you're buying properties that cash flow, 75% will definitely cover the mortgage because that's all they're looking for. Sometimes they're looking for a 1.1. So if your mortgage is $1,000 a month, they're looking for cash flow or income of $1,100 a month. And so it could be a little bit different. Check with your lenders, but it's 75% of rental income. I've never had an issue. And I've only house hacked twice. The rest of my properties were purchased as investments, so they weren't even taking owner occupancy into the equation. It's just get rental income on your tax returns for 2 years, and then some lenders will like to have the majority, which means more than half, the majority of your rentals have more than 3 months remaining on your lease. And I kind of confused me in the beginning. I thought, this lender's letting me make a 30-year commitment because a tenant made a 3-month commitment. And then the lender explained it to me. And this is tracked, except for once. Every time I've had a mortgage, the mortgage was sold within 3 days. One time it was 3 months later, and it creates some issues. So they're not going to own it in 3 months. They want to know that you have rental income that will cover the duration of the time when they own the note. And then a super chat from Surf Marco. Howdy again. I did watch your estimating rents video, but still unsure. Can you share your top 3 tools, service methods to use to estimate rents? So the first tool that most people don't think about when you're estimating rents is time. It's going to take about 2 weeks to get a good feel for what the rents are in an area, because you need to see what properties sit listed for a long time, because what happened a month ago, historical data from a month ago, means nothing now on rentals. You want current data. So like you were trying to rent a property now, look on Zillow, apartments.com, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, like you were trying to rent a property in that area. You can use paper, you can use a spreadsheet, write down the properties that are for sale, think bedroom count more than anything else, don't think amenities, and try to get an average of what they're going for. But also watch, it's going to take a couple of weeks to figure out. That one looks like the rents are great, but it's been listed for 2 months straight or 2 weeks straight, and nobody's even making offers on it. Hasn't gone anywhere. So that's not the area average rent. That's not even one you might consider in the area average rent. It's not like you take your highest and lowest and you figure it's in the middle. You get enough of them, and you might have to check different sources, because in some areas everybody uses Zillow, and in other areas everybody's on Craigslist and nobody's on Zillow. So you might pull up 2 or 3 of those platforms, and I did this as an example in the video I think you're talking about. And on one of the platforms there was one rental, one. So in the whole footprint, so you might have to go to different platforms to find the rentals. So it's Zillow, Redfin, apartments.com, Craigslist, because Craigslist is one that doesn't work. There are programs like Hemlane. I used Hemlane on my last property. You hit one button, you put in all the information, it sends it out to several different sources. The one weird critique is it kind of moves your photos around, because the way each platform is set up differently. Didn't matter to me, because my first 3 or 4 photos are the only ones I really cared that the applicants see anyway. So I didn't have like a first one I wanted to pop out. But you hit one button and it goes everywhere. But Craigslist is one that's unique. You have to go in and do. So some areas, if that's the one that's primarily used, make sure you're checking that. Yeah, that's how I would do that. Tom, I won last week on Lumberjack's channel. I am ready to win on your channel also. I need a long read to keep me busy while I drive. Nice. Somebody said my voice would put them to sleep, so careful. And thank you, Laura, for your super chat. I remember that. Joey, howdy. Thanks for doing this, Dion. Have you ever opened a HELOC and used it for a deal? There is a local bank in my market that is offering a 5-year HELOC, 5% fixed rate, up to 100% current loan to value. Seems amazing. So my brother used the HELOC strategy and reached financial freedom and retired with 10 paid off rentals. The risk with the home equity line of credit is lenders can at any point in time cancel the remaining amount. So it's not that they call it and you just have to pay back what you've borrowed or what you've used of it, but they could stop the remaining amount, which can impact your credit by instantly taking you to a 100% credit utilization on a loan if they drop what you could borrow above what you have. It impacts your debt to income ratio. So you have to think, if I have a home equity line of credit and I could take out 100,000, but I haven't taken any, they figure 1% is a monthly bill, $1,000 a month gets added to your debt to income ratio. So when you're starting out, that might create a bit of a problem buying a property because you don't have the rental income yet on your tax returns. So your debt to income needs to be a factor there. So before you take the home equity line of credit out, make sure you're going to be able to qualify for what you're buying. I don't recommend using a home equity line of credit, a loan against your retirement account, cashing out a retirement account, second refinance, or selling something to take money and buy your first property, because your first or second deal is going to be where you probably make most of your mistakes. That's at least tracked with almost everybody I've talked to. Even earlier today in my live stream with Mark Matsky, he said all of the mistakes he made was on that first deal. But on the second, third, or fourth, maybe third or fourth video where you've got the basics down on making sure your cash flow is right, you're running your numbers right, you know how to do everything, you know how your local rules are working, then maybe because you're putting your primary house or your retirement accounts at risk, then it might make more sense. I haven't done it. And remember, when you say take out a HELOC, you're not putting equity to work. You are creating debt on an existing asset to buy another asset. So the debt created on the first asset needs to be justified in your cash on cash return of that second asset. Both of those payments go to that asset. The other thing is it's 5-year fixed, right? Are you sure you can pay it off within 5 years? Because no kidding, in 5 years, interest rates might be 20%. No one has a crystal ball that works. I've got one, doesn't work. Or all my marriages would have been different. I said all, there's 2. Right, so if you can't pay it off within 5 years, focus and pay it off within 5 years. I don't know that I would take that risk. I don't ever want to have adjustable rate anything. Financial freedom comes from financial stability and money coming in that you don't have to sell your life 1 hour at a time for. Adjustable rates doesn't provide stability. Does sound like a good home equity line of credit, but do you have, remember I talked about this earlier too, I don't know if you were here then, but before you home equity line of credit, cash out refinance, second mortgage, sell to 1031. The first question is always not, do I think I can find, but do I know of deals that I could get? I could make the price offer that I want to get the yield that that's going to justify the added debt. Does that actually exist? Is it a real thing? And not, I could probably get a 10% return in my area. Just not that kind of ethereal, thoughts. I mean, concrete. These deals exist. This is the price they're going for. I'll be able to do that. That's the first question before you take the money out. Thank you for that question, though. I hoop howdy. Is it possible to get a conventional loan with 3 to 5% or maybe even 10% down payment and not have to live in the house for a year? I have heard of some conventional loans on investment properties at 10%. You have to lender shop and really hunt to find them. I think you're going to have mortgage insurance and you're going to have a higher interest rate. I don't know about the 3 to 5%. I'm sure that it's possible. I've not seen it or heard of it, but I have heard of 10% on investment properties. You might have better luck there going local with a local bank or local credit union. But that doesn't mean every area. It just means in some areas the local ones are better. So those loan products, and they change often. Like in one lender, what they offered 3 months later will be totally different. So it is possible. Laura, I read the book so much that I can't put it away. So motivational, Dion. Thanks for you so much for taking the time to record it. I should track how long it took to record it, because Audible is picky. The system to record is not intuitive, and every single sound bite has to be edited. Cody, howdy. Would you ever consider out-of-state investing? Why or why not? Pros and cons. So it depends on what state you're in. What is the reason why you wouldn't invest in your state? If you're going to invest out of state, it would have to require somebody there that I trust. So like Millennial Mike wanted to invest. He lives around Seattle. He wanted to invest in Gary, Indiana, but it worked because he met Mark Matsky. Sorry, messed up his name. So Mark Matsky. And he already invested there. So he had a team in place of people he trusted. And I mean, really trust. You don't know, if you don't live there, you don't know the markets. If you used to live there, you might know the markets. But do you know somebody who lives in the area who actually works in the industry, handyman, contractor, agent, property manager, somebody who's working in real estate that you trust in that area? Because I guarantee if you called an agent in Gary, Indiana right now, and you said, I live in California or New York or Seattle, and I want to buy a property in your area, they're going to send you a screaming deal. Amazing. It's going to sound so cheap. It's going to be like $40,000 for a house that needs no work. It's going to be great, right? That's a deal that every local investor and every out-of-state investor who's already investing in that area passed on for a reason. And that agent just found their unicorn. An out-of-state investor who doesn't know the market but thinks their properties are cheap will buy it and then lose money. So boots on the ground, somebody you think you trust well enough that they're going to come to your funeral. And for me, I invest in Washington State, which is not extremely landlord friendly. Like there's a county that I wouldn't invest in. And then there's 30 something other counties that are kind of iffy. We don't have rent control yet, but it's very tenant friendly. I still invest here because I know the areas. I know the markets. I can self-manage. The binder strategy works better in person, where I get my tenants to ask for the rent increase. There's a few reasons why I want that. I want to invest in real estate for control. And part of control for me has been house hacking. You can house hack out of state. And I have a video how to house hack at a distance. It can be your summer home, your second home. It can be, some states require 3 months and a day for that to be your primary residence. I mean, there's like a lot of ways to invest house hacking out of state. I haven't done it. I have looked at other properties because I thought I was going to work another 10 years until I did math, I guess, and time freedom won out. But the truck driving school that I was running was looking at putting campuses in Arizona and then in Idaho. So I looked at both of those markets, and I looked in Florida for a friend. But myself, I've only invested locally. So there are pros and cons to each. Part of it comes down to also, since I invest with all my properties within an hour's drive of each other, I might have to go with 2 property managers. I could go with 1 possibly, but negotiating power with property managers comes from unit count. So the more units you have, the lower percentage you're going to pay. So if there is a point at some point in the future that I decide to go with property management, I'll pay less because I'll have more negotiating power. If I had one or two in each state that I went invested at a distance, less negotiation power. I who party. And is a newly built single family home or duplex considered a good investment? Consider that it costs way more than something a little older. So there are some states that have rent control where if the building is 5 years or younger, the rent control doesn't apply. So maybe. I prefer to buy properties that are 20 to 40 years old. The ROI is just better. And it might be area specific or area dependent. There might be areas where there's just new builds that are better. Hasn't been the case for me. I haven't seen very many new things that cash flow. A duplex in my area that was built in 2010 and a duplex that was built in 1990 rent for exactly the same amount. Tenants don't even know the year these things were built and don't care. I have a triplex that was built in 1921. It's not even as old as most of the stuff in the lumberjack landlord's portfolio. And it rents out. It's actually 2 of the units are rented out at the highest of any of my units. So no, I wouldn't look at something newer being a better or worse investment than something older. I would look at run the cash flow and not think that newer means better. Some people say, I bought a brand new house, so I don't have to set aside reserves for maintenance. That's not how any of this works. The tree that falls and breaks your windows doesn't care how old the window is. The water heater that breaks doesn't matter if it was 2 weeks old or 5 years old sometimes. That's a good question, though. So for me personally, I won't look specifically for younger places. That's all. They have side-by-side fourplexes. Yes, I've got, that's my fourplex. So I was looking at fourplexes in the area and they're mostly big blocks, like 2 up, 2 down. And I looked and I found the one fourplex that I purchased. I've only got the one so far. And it was a picture from the back. One picture on the listing. This agent screwed up so bad. And it showed a big square. And I thought, it's another fourplex. But the price is not terrible. I think it was They listed it for $595. I offered $600 and we negotiated down to $590. That was the numbers. It's been a while now for that one, but that was the numbers on that one. So I went to Google Earth and I dropped down to Street View and I looked around and I was looking for the fourplex and I couldn't find it. I saw these townhomes. I saw this lawn care center across the street and I was looking around for the fourplex because the photo shows the back, which is the big square. The front was these were all side by sides, fourplex, all up and down, but the unit is up and down, and then each one had a garage. I could not make my offer fast enough. I figured, unless somebody street views this, they have no idea what they're looking at because the back is a big ugly square. Like the agent was just stupid. In my area now, it will go for about 1.6. So it's almost like owning real estate is a good thing. Joey, Hoop Hardly, it's possible for you to get a second house mortgage with 10% down. All primary resident mortgages require you to live in them for 1 year. Invest property mortgage require a minimum of 15%. So Joey, that's fairly close. I have seen lenders do investment properties at less than 15% down. There might be other caveats there to it that might be things that they don't put in there. It's in the Cliff Notes, put the fine print down at the bottom, but not Stephen Dow, Matt the mortgage guy, and last year had a program. So you just check with each lender different times, and you might get lower than 15% down on an investment property. And then IHOP says, thanks, Joey. Laura, sorry, I am technologically challenged and couldn't figure out how to send the message with the super chat at the same time. Panama is great. Best time is in the dry season, December to March. Oh, cool. So coming up. So I am looking for a place to go. And then Vetsal with his question on the 2 agent thing. I lost my chat, which should be easy to find. There we go. How do I handle this situation? I don't get emails. It's just a link to a portal. Ooh, okay. I guess I should. How are they sending you the link? So you get the link to the portal. It's which one you found first. Which one did you find it on first? That would be my, yeah, wherever you saw the information first is where I would go with. Tom, to Laura, the super chat message is limited to the amount of money you spend. It's dumb. That is stupid. I agree. Surf Marco, if text, what was the first text? Email. I said, yeah. So if it's a portal, it would still go back to the, you're logging into a portal. Which one did you find it on first? But Sal, to Surf Marco, it's just a link from original email that we interact with. Robert. So I would think if you have a link to a portal, but you're looking at a couple different ones, whichever one you find it on first would be the one I go for. Unless an agent said, because I have agents that do this, that even though I have auto searches set up and they're sending me emails, one will reach out and say, hey, you got like 4 emails this morning, but look at the second one. This one really hits your criteria because they know what I'm looking for. Then that would be the one I would go for. Robert, howdy. For buying, thoughts on contacting seller agent directly to buy, put in, offer in. It depends. Me, I do things where I'm thinking long-term, and real estate is a finite world. You're going to be known for decades in this world. So I like agents who want to bring me deals. So even when I found a property that I like that I found on my own, I will go to an agent that I know is responsive and have them make an offer, even though they're going to get the commission, because it doesn't really impact you. It can change a little bit on the listing agent's desirability to have you be the one to get it, because they might get either both seller commissions or a reduced amount. A lot of times it's 6% goes to agent fees, 3% for one, 3% for the other. Unless there's only one agent, then that person gets 5%. So there could be however the deal is structured through their brokerage. So there is a motivation factor for the listing agent to want to work with somebody who doesn't have an agent. But the listing agent doesn't work for you. I want my agent to go in and negotiate and be totally fine with me walking away. The person who has the ability to walk away has the power. So when I tell my agent, look, I'm going to offer $300,000 for this property, and if they counter at 320, tell them thanks. Hopefully you find it, and my deal sounds good, but we're not going any higher. The listing agent might not be comfortable even bringing that up, but my agents know that I say exactly what I'm going to do. So I like having an agent on my side that is going to get a commission. I like paying contractors. I like paying handymen. I like, because money from tenants and gross rents is being put into an account to pay for those future repairs, right? So I don't feel like I'm paying for a repair. I had a garage door put on a duplex beginning of this year. It was like $2,000 because inflation happened. I now have a brand new garage door that the tenants paid for over the last couple of years. My agents, I like it when my agent gets their commission. I would never try to negotiate down their price. And if I bring them a deal and I say, look, I'm bringing you a deal, you're going to get your commission, that agent's going to want to work with me in the future. So I haven't approached sellers, listing agents directly by myself without an agent yet. That doesn't mean I wouldn't. It's just currently I kind of like bringing, I like supporting the people who are going to help me reach financial freedom and stay there. Keith, howdy. Tom, did you see the market today? Good thing you don't have those investments. It went down 1350, right? Could have been worse. I guess housing prices can drop too, but who would care? Right? The flipper, maybe. The person in the middle of a burr trying to refinance, maybe. The buy and hold investor doesn't care. There's so many times when there are channels who are screaming, hey, there's a crash coming in, and there's somebody like me saying, it doesn't matter. I'm going to buy now. I'm going to buy then. I'm going to buy if it goes up. I'm going to buy if it goes down. I'm not even caring. I'm not going to time the market. I'm going to buy the property that makes sense. And then they go, well, what if you buy and prices drop? Who cares? Now, if I buy and rents drop, that might not be so good. But you guys that are watching my channel, you'll know what I'm about to say. Since we've started tracking the data, rents have never once in a 5-year period ever gone down. Not even in 2009 and 2010. Rents went up because all those foreclosures created more demand on rentals. I invest planning on a 50% rent decrease and not having to go back to work. So I'm not over leveraged. I have enough cash flow. I didn't retire until I had the cash flow to handle that. even though we've never seen a 10% decrease. Now, there are some local markets. If you invested in an area where, you're in Detroit and there was a car manufacturers now move away, or you're by Silicon Valley and .com crash really hits that area, some markets can go down, but that's why I diversified next to a base, a port, college, hospital, Boeing, or Amazon, or large population, or multiple drivers, so that there's sources of tenants coming from so many things that where a stock market crash, a pandemic, a prolonged government shutdown doesn't make me have to go back to work. Surf market to Vatsal. There should be a timestamp or time reference somewhere if you can't find timestamps. Think of the breaker. Maybe send another email text. Which one responds back first? There you go. So response time. Keith, should I ask agent 1 for bank-owned and estate sales and agent 2 for REO and HUD, agent 3 for auctions and tax sales? I don't do that. I give exactly the same criteria to the agents, and still they don't. That one time they've sent me the same deal twice, once in the same 24-hour period with the same criteria. So I think you'd be missing out if you limited. What I would rather is agents sending me things. If they did send me the thing, they would be at a different time. It'd be almost impossible for them to be the exact same moment. But I want to be the filter. I want to filter out as much as possible. So my criteria does say a few things like no short sales, no foreclosures, no HOAs. So there's a couple things I just don't want to deal with, but the rest of it is kind of vague so that the properties come in and then I'm eliminating the ones that I don't want, because I'd rather see deals that I don't want than miss the one that I would have wanted. Tom, what's your thoughts on the Fed's next raise based on CPI today? Here is where I diverge from the three amigos. Honest answer, Tom. No freaking clue. Don't care. They could say interest rates are 0. We're going to drop them 300 basis points. They could raise them 300 basis points. Don't care. So I don't have the mindset of what do I think they're going to do, because that would impact. I'm going to wait because that's what I would want them to do, and then I'll do it. And waiting will always cost you. I want to think in my head, if they raise a full 100 basis points, they raise 1% on interest rates, here's what I'm going to do. If it goes down, here's what I'm going to do. Like, have a plan for either. And the plan doesn't change too much. It's save, reducing spending, increasing income, looking at different strategies based on how your reserve is, or your investing fund is piling up. It might be an all cash Spurred at some point if we can't find a deal by a certain time. It might be looking at different asset classes. It might be looking at a bigger circle of investing area. So I wish, Tom, and that's a great question, I wish I could go, here's what I think they're going to do based on the inflation sucks or whatever. I did make a bet with Michael Zuber and Matt the Lumberjack Landlord, mostly, honestly, for entertainment value, because I don't care if they go up or down. Right? I didn't even know what they do. I don't even care about interest rates, because it's just one equation in rents, rates, prices, and then ability to create value. So sometimes that's like buying a duplex. I purchased, each side has over 1,100 square feet, and both sides were 2 bedrooms. Like, they have dens that just don't have a wall and a closet. And then I get in there, one actually has a wall and a closet. It's just called a den. So now there are 3 bedrooms rented out. Yeah, so I don't have a good answer for you, Tom. It seems like, and it's because I get my information from Zuber like everybody else when it comes to financial updates every morning, which I really recommend, 7:30 every morning, except Thursday, he does it at 7. Michael Zuber, One Rental at a Time's financial update. It gives you information to know what's going on currently. The thing I really try to filter out is, what do we think is going to happen next quarter, 6 months, next year, and fall back on. It's always a good day to buy a great deal and hunt for the great deal. Hope that satisfies that question, because it is a good question. And then Travis, look through if I can find here, make sure I got that question for you. I appreciate you sending that. Travis, howdy. Hey, Dion, I have 2 questions this Tuesday. How do you introduce yourself to new tenants when they buy a property? Mailer, call, or set up and meet and greet, etc. Okay, let me handle that one first. So I'm most of the time, I think all but 1 or 2 times, I've kind of met tenants during the inspection or appraisal, because I'll show up for both of those. And I like to ask questions during that time to because I have found things during an inspection. The one property that I backed out of, it appraised $50,000 low. The inspector found about $30,000 or $50,000 worth of water damage to all the joists. And the tenant on one side of the duplex told me, our rent is really high because we didn't pay a deposit. So this first year we're paying the deposit throughout the months, and that wasn't shown in the lease anywhere. So they expected the rent to go down significantly at the end of the year. It's like there was all these things that lined up. It's the one deal I've backed out of once I was under contract. So I like to meet tenants that way, put them at ease, try to have a conversation. I ask them, if you own the place, what's the first thing you would fix, to try to let them know my intent is to fix. I tell them I'm going to be putting in the coated locks and the lights outside that are more energy efficient and provide better lights for safety. When it closes, so not before, but with the day that it closes, I will hand deliver or mail if I'm not in the country, because that's happened a couple times too. What is called a landlord introduction letter. It basically just says, "Hi, I'm the new owner. This is how you contact me. Please don't pay the previous owner. This was the date of the sale closure." They know because they were there for the inspection, the appraisal, and the previous owner should have told them too. And then how you like to collect rents. And then I'll be reaching out soon to set up a meeting to have a conversation with you. Tenants are always afraid that you're going to buy the house and kick them out, buy the house and raise the rent so much they have to leave. So the first thing I like to do is set them at ease, saying, unless the one time it was, I'm moving in, you're going to have to move out. You want to say, look, it's not my intention to have anybody move out. It's my intention to maintain the place. And let's set a date to get together and talk. I don't do the binder strategy right away. Binder strategy happens at about the 2-month period, because you didn't get to vet those tenants. You don't know their credit score, their work history. I don't make them fill out applications. People don't need an added expense just because I purchased a place. And you might not be able to in some areas because you're bound by the existing lease, not a new lease. And at the 2-month mark, then I'll use the binder strategy, because now I know if I want to keep them as tenants. Like I know they pay on time. I know if they get noise complaints, and if they call me for super trivial things, like the things that actually matter more so than knowing their credit score. If they pay on time, that's what matters, right? Then I'll do the binder strategy. So that was the first part of your question, Travis. Then how would you handle a situation where a duplex doesn't have active leases? One is from 10 years ago and the other doesn't have one. The weird thing is the 10-year-old lease is 125 lower than paid rent. So they're missing a verbal agreement to raise the rent at some point. I would go in and say, just explain during when you're meeting your tenants, you say, I understand that you're living here without a lease. Now, I require a lease because my lenders require me to have leases, or I can't qualify for future purchases. So that's how I've justified needing long leases. So I don't do anything less than a year. And if they don't want that, then you don't have to renew the current existing lease. And that doesn't mean they have to stay there. You might end up going through an eviction on that, but it's not like you're going and saying, hey, we're going to do a lease and your rent's going to double, right? You go in and you have an existing lease. I don't change anything for 2 months. Let them continue to pay the current rent that they had. That sets them at ease. The first time they make a rent payment, that's the same as before you bought it. They relax a lot. And you have time to do things like I replace the coated locks and the lights and ask them if there's anything they want to fix. They know that I'm going to take care of the place. So the binder strategy conversation goes a lot better. But I would get leases in place. That's okay, Travis. I found your questions. Cool. And now I'm figuring out where I was at here. Tips to qualify for a house hack. There we go. What's your thoughts on CPI today? Ethan, howdy. Tips to qualify for a house hack if you own a property which affects your debt to income ratio. Find a lender, some, that are not all made the same, that will include the rental income either on the house that you're moving out of. You might have to get a lease before you move. Find somebody. Don't fake it. Find somebody who's going to rent the place that will sign a lease early. Or if you're buying a small multifamily as a house hack, look for one that has leases in place and find a lender that will recognize those leases. Some won't recognize leases at all until you have rental income for tax, on your tax returns for 2 years. But some right away will say, yep, we'll look at the rental income as long as the leases are longer than 3 months. lender shopping. They are not all made the same. And don't talk to a lender, an actual lender who works in the business and is at their desk every day doing nothing but working on this thing, and listen to them say, you have to pay this much down. You have to live there for a year. You have to have your debt to income here. That lender, 2 weeks, might have completely different things to say because they get directives from management. Each lending agency is different. There are some regulations, but the regulations are usually there to protect the borrower more than the lender. Train like God CPT. Howdy. God's captain, maybe. Howdy from the Silicon Valley. Howdy. Laura, to Tom Klein, thanks for your comment. I had like 3 anxiety attacks trying to figure it out anytime. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm very happy, Laura, that you figured out YouTube and can make comments. I remember we met and you said that was a challenge, and this tech is challenging on both sides too. To get this to happen, to do these live streams where I can send an invite to Lumberjack Landlord or Millennial Mike or somebody else, like next week, I'm thinking if she's up to it, Beth, to come to this. It takes so many hoops to jump through that a lot of the content creators that I interact with, I've actually had calls to say, here's how it works. And even that goes wrong. An example, Millennial Mike and I did a live stream together a few days ago, almost a week ago now. Watch the first 30 minutes when we didn't know we were live yet. At least we didn't say anything like really bad. Matt, howdy, Matt Motley. Do you have any advice for long distance property management? I own 2 rentals and commercial property, and I'm getting ready to move to another country. I'd rather not pay a property manager. So, Matt Motley, 3 rentals and 1 commercial. If you have a dialed in tenant and you have a handyman in place that can handle issues, and you have relationships with some contractors like electrician and plumber, maybe roofer contact, that you know you can reach out to. And if you know anybody in the area that would be willing to meet for tenant turnover, Hemlane is an option that actually has a 3-tiered self-management system. I think currently I'm using their first tier. And if you want to get a discount on Hemlane, you just use the code Dion, and they'll take a percentage off the first tier. The first tier is you can list properties and collect rents. And I might mess some of this up because my memory is not great, but they have it all on their website. Hemlane, Hemlane. Second tier is you can have a portal, so you can list properties, collect rents, dispatch your handyman through the portal where the tenants text or email, and then it goes to you and the handyman. Or you can use an Angie's List version of Hemlane's contacts nationwide, so they can have handyman go out too. And then the third tier is they actually have leasing agents, somebody who will go to the property and sign leases for you. But for me, it would come down to having a good handyman. To me, that's more important than anything else. Having somebody who will take the 10:30 at night call because there's a leak and go there and say, hey, I can fix it, it's done, or I can't fix it, I need to get you a plumber out here. You're going to pay 2 times for that, but you're paying for the freedom of being able to live in another country. So that would be my suggestion. Get your team in place that's been running it so that you don't have to go to the property. I'm trying to think of the last time I had to go to a property. I chose to go to a tenant. I had 2 tenant turnovers. I went to one of them and did a video walkthrough. I've never been in this unit before. I want to show everybody what it's like. So I did a walkthrough and found out that I actually have a 2-bedroom unit there, not a 1-bedroom. And then, like the inspection report said, and the previous lease was listed. So that was good news. But if you can go a certain amount of time without ever having to go to your properties because you have that system in place, that would give me more confidence to manage at a distance. I kind of self-manage at a distance now. I've spent a month in Thailand, a month in Colombia. Last year, I took a month with my brothers and drove all over the US. Me and my brother right now are thinking about going to the next place, which earlier this year we thought Russia. That they got the vodka, the good stuff. Plans changed. And now we're thinking maybe Panama. Because I've always wanted to try vodka every Tuesday. I hope that helps, Matt. Delbert, howdy. Greetings. If you only make $200 net cash flow, it will take 10 properties to earn $2,000 a month. That's the issue I'm facing with 6 properties I have already. My goal is $5,000 a month. Any advice? What is happening to rents in your area? first thing, make sure you're doing rent increases the right way. And that doesn't mean the maximum amount of rents, because that's going to create tenant turnover, but I would use the binder strategy. Hopefully you're familiar with that. Let me know if you are, Delbert. If not, I'll give you a Cliff Notes version. There's also a couple of videos on this channel. Just look up binder strategy, Dion Talk, and I'll explain how you get your tenants to ask you to raise the rent. Second, really watch interest rates. If you ever get a chance to refinance to a lower rate, I would take advantage of a lower rate refinance, not a loan renewal to bring down the rate and add at a higher interest rate or anything. Do the math where it makes sense. The first or second year owning a property, the cash flow to me was, let's say it was the same, 200. By year 3, it's close to double that. And some of your expenses will go up. And I'm not saying rents will double, but you will have stabilized the property. When you buy them, if you haven't used the binder strategy, there's a significant increase. You get rid of that first year where you're not sure what time of year you bought it. You're not sure when the mortgage payments started. You're not sure if you had tenant turnover or any expenses you had to repair from the previous owner. Like, there's all those things that happen there. Your cash flow should increase over time. And so $200 per door, but let's say it takes you 5 years to buy the next door. Worst case scenario, literally 5 years to save. That $200 per door that you have now shouldn't be $200 per door in 5 years. It's time is the missing element from your equation there. When I had 7 units, the cash flow was $2,700 a month. Now I have 16. So that's 2 times plus 2. So a little bit over 100% increase in unit count. So I have 16 units now. And the cash flow pure profit is a little over 4, well, it's almost 15. It's like 14,000 something. I'm not sure what the percentage increase of 2,700 is to 14, but it increased greatly over time. That's over about a 10-year span. So since going from 7 units to 16 units was 4 years though. So significantly less to increase that. It grows over time. Don't make the mistake that Stephan makes, and a lot of landlords make. I've got the friend with 30 rental units. He's never raised the rent, which makes it so Stephan has had rentals in California. That's how he reached financial freedom. And then he made his channel, and he's much more successful on YouTube than he was in real estate. Totally get why he's selling some of his properties. He just recently had a tenant trash his property. One of the reasons why he's selling is like, yeah, it wasn't making that much money, but he even admits in the video, he never raised the rent in 10 years. So 10 years in California with 5 to 10% increases every month, that property now, because the rent control being the limiting factor there, he can't set the rents where they should be on the existing tenant. He could on the tenant move out. And now it's an attractive property that's actually making a lot, because he paid like $70,000 for it and rented out in California and LA. Could be, thousands in rent instead of the 1,000 when he bought it or whatever. Right? He never said what his rent was, but increasing rents is how you run a successful business. Increasing rents with the binder strategy is how you do it and have happy tenants. Happy tenants don't trash your property, and happy tenants don't leave. And then I put in my thing where I was going to wrap up around here. I hope, what is an ADU? Let's see if anybody put in here. So an ADU, it depends. So there's different words for it depending on where you live. Some people will call it a granny flat, mother-in-law house, accessory dwelling unit, auxiliary dwelling unit, detached accessory dwelling unit. It's basically another living area on the same property that was intended for an older family member. That's why they call a mother-in-law house or a granny flat. But with the housing problem that we have, a lot of municipalities and governments are encouraging people to add them. Doesn't mean adding one is easy. Michael Zuber started trying to add one over 2 years ago and is still running into roadblocks. And now the current roadblock is they want him to spend $10,000 to $20,000 to add solar panels on an ADU to add it at no return on investment. So it might make him just not even add it. But when you're looking for those properties, it's an often missed asset class. Home buyers don't want it because they're not looking for tenants. And inspectors usually say, I want small multifamily. Well, small multifamily doesn't populate the search for ADU, DADU, accessory, auxiliary, granny, mother-in-law. Like, it's totally missed. So you might eliminate a lot of competition by looking for those properties. The really good thing is the numbers work like a duplex. It's 2 rentals, right? One side might be bigger or smaller than the other, which can happen with a duplex too, but they're just not touching. The benefit is, even though there's 2 units, it gets all of the lending benefits of single family house. Whereas with duplexes in the last couple of years, a lot of lenders, if you weren't using FHA, even for conventional, would want 10 or 15% down. That's shifted to where there's a lot now that are offering 5%, but FHA sounded better buying a duplex because it was still only 3.5. But if you buy a house with an EDU using a conventional loan as your first time purchase, it's 3% down. And mortgage insurance goes away as soon as you hit 22% equity. So like there's all the benefits of single family house with 2 units. Let me just tear through these really quick unless I missed anything else. I don't think I did. Make sure. Got to Travis's question. So before I wrap up here, hopefully I don't miss anybody's really important question. I will be doing another live stream on Tuesday. I might do a live stream with Beth Traverso tomorrow. Maybe. We're going to do a video on the slides. That won't be a live stream. We might do a live stream here and talk about her short-term rental and her vacation rental. We'll see what she's up for. Thank you much. Cheers. So I said right here where I was going to be wrapping up. Watch it, Dan. You will never know how much your encouragement have helped me overcome my fears. Thanks so much for taking the time meeting with me. Panama has its own vodka version. Nice. When I went to Colombia, somebody tried to tell me aguardiente was like vodka. It is not. They actually thought I was a raving alcoholic in Colombia because they get these shot glasses that are tall. It's way too much of an overshare. They put these shot glasses out that you're kind of supposed to sip, I guess, while you're eating aguardiente. And I didn't much like the taste because it was brand new. It was a new taste. It was like beer is probably an acquired taste, right? I just didn't like it. So every time I got one of them, would just drink the whole thing just to get it over with. So they thought I was an alcoholic. I'm not saying I'm not. Okay. All right, I think I'm going to be wrapping it up there. So this is going to be loud, so I'm probably going to mute I'm going to mute it because it'll break somebody's ears. I'm going to be rolling this to figure out who wins the Audible version of One Rental at a Time's new book, 15 Conversations with Real Estate Millionaires. Literally one, a goose egg. So it goes to Tom. First super chat of this. So Tom, email me. You now get a book that hopefully doesn't put you to sleep while you drive. Hopefully I'm not muted. And then you're excluded from this, Tom. The second one I'm going to give away. I should have muted it. It was going to be loud. It almost breaks the desk. 13. So now, to figure out who 13. So Tom, you're not in this, so that actually goes out. So it starts with Phil. 1, 2, 3, 4. Are there going to be enough? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10. Okay. How do you handle that? Let me see. So 13, if this was cut in half, would be 3. If we did 1 to 10, 1 to 20. So then third. So 1, 2, 3. Lauren. So Lauren, you win another audiobook, and you have to tell me which one it is. Email me, and I would prefer it can be anyone you want, but Rich Dad Poor Dad, Set for Life by Scott Trench, one of those kind of books. Doesn't have to be, but could be. And I did say if Lauren won one, I was going to roll it again. So then we're going to cut this dice in half. I'm going to hit mute. I will be doing 3 this time. 16. So that's 6. So Lauren and Tom are out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Laura. So I'm going to write these down because you guys have to email me. Tom, Lauren, Laura. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me on a live stream. I really appreciate it. I hope the audiobooks help you. If you have 15 conversations with real estate millionaires already, pick another audiobook. I'm giving away audiobooks during my live streams. Not all of them, just when I have enough credits and when I remember to, because my memory sucks. Thank you all so much for coming to my live stream. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.